Alphonse. Today we are going to be going over the data lifecycle. This is a part of an ongoing series where I study the intersection between cybersecurity and law. With all said, let's get right into this video. Okay, so in 2026, the data lifecycle is no longer just about storing files. It is about managing the legal and technical gravity of data from the moment it is created to the moment it is scientifically destroyed. With the NIST SP 888 Revision 2 updates and the 2026 California Delete Act in full effect, this project, the Data Lifecycles, focuses on the right to be forgotten and the technical impossibility of deleting data in a cloud-first world. Why does this matter? Because with the full enforcement of the California Delete Act and the new NIST 888 Revision 2 standards, deleting a file is no longer a technical suggestion, it is a forensic and legal requirement. Failure to manage this cycle now carries fines of $200 per user per day. We will be going over the tech, the law, and the mesh aspects of each stage and searching answers to questions along the way. By the end of this video, you will understand, or we will understand, the 6 stages of the modern data lifecycle, the difference between clearing and purging data, and how to protect your organization from data ghosting in AI models. The 6 stages of the 2026 data lifecycle. We want to think of the data as radioactive material. It's useful when controlled, but the longer you keep it, the more legal decay it creates, increasing your liability. Going over stage 1, creation and collection, which would be the identify of the NIST CSF. The tech side of this is that the data is generated via IoT sensors, user inputs, and AI inferences. The law aspect is data minimization. Under the 2026 state laws, Indiana, Kentucky, Rhode Island, if you collect data you don't need for a specific business purpose, you are committing a compliance violation before the data is even stored. The mesh, lawyers must approve the terms of service to ensure the tech team isn't over-collecting. Stage 2, processing, the protect of the NIST CSF. The tech aspect, data is moved into transit. It is being transformed or used to train AI models. The law aspect, purpose limitation. You cannot collect data for shipping and then use it for AI ad targeting without new consent. The mesh, privacy enhancing technologies, or PETs, like differential privacy, or are used here to process data without seeing the actual identities. And then stage 3, storage, or the honeypot phase. The tech side is that the data is now at rest. This is where encryption, or AES-256, and immutable backups live. The law side, data residency. Laws in 2026 often require that sensitive data about citizens stay within certain borders, like the EU data stays in EU. The mesh, if the storage is materially breached, the 4-day SEC clock from Project 7 starts here. I'll link Project 7 down below. Which is just the timer that you have to notify the government that something happened, a legal breach or something similar of nature happened. Usage and sharing is stage 4. The tech side of this stage is that APIs share data with third-party vendors, and then the law side is the vendor risk management. You are legally responsible for your vendors. If your cloud provider loses the data, you get sued, not the vendors. So, what's the mesh? Attorneys draft data processing agreements, or DPAs, that force vendors to delete data on demand. And then we have stage 5, which is the retention or the archive stage. On the tech side, you have moving data to the cold storage, and on the law side, you have statutes of limitation. You must keep tax data for 7 years, but you must delete deleted user accounts within 30 to 45 days. The mesh, legal holds. If a lawsuit starts, the attorney tells the tech team, stop the auto-delete script. If the tech team deletes it anyway, it's spoliation of evidence, which we also covered in previous videos. Now we have stage 6, destruction and sanitation, which is sanitization. What am I talking about? We have stage 6, which is destruction and sanitization, the NIST 888 revision 2, where the tech side is the most critical 2026 deep dive. You don't just delete a file, right? You sanitize it. And the law side is that the California Delete Act, or the drop platform, here in 2026, consumers can hit one button on a state website to demand 500 plus companies delete their data at once. And the mesh here is the certificate of destruction. The tech team provides a digital receipt proving the data was purged or destroyed, which the lawyer uses to defend against a $200 per day per user fine. Now let's take a closer look at the 2026 sanitization standards, or the NIST 888, because we want to be able to distinguish between the 3 levels of getting rid of the data. Level 1 would be clear or basic. This is the standard software-based overriding. It's good for reusing a laptop within the same company. Then you have the purge, or the advanced level, where you would be using secure erase or cryptographic erasure, CE. CE works by destroying the encryption keys. The data stays on the drive, but it is mathematically impossible to read. This is the 2026 standard for SSDs and cloud storage. And then you have the physical level, or the destroy level, where you would shred the drive into pieces smaller than 2 millimeters. This is required for top secret or highly regulated health data. Now, let's talk about this cyber legal analogy, which we would be using a library. So, for example, the creation phase, where a new book is written and put on a shelf. Then the storage phase, the book is locked in a vault. And then the retention phase, after 10 years, the book is moved to the basement. And then the destruction phase, where you don't just throw the book in the trash or deletion, you would put it through a high-grade shredder and burn to pieces, which would be sanitization. If the librarian or the tech throws it in the trash, a private investigator, like a hacker or a plaintiff, can pull it out and read it. So to do a brief summary of the 4 stages, I know I said 6 stages, but we can shorten it to about 4 stages. Collection, storage, retention, and then destruction. So the collection would be the tech, API integration, the legal, consent, disclosure, review. For storage, encryption at rest for the tech. For the lawyers, data residency compliance. For retention, the auto-archiving scripts for tech, and then for the lawyers, data retention policy setting. And then for destruction, cryptographic erasure for the tech, and then drop platform compliance for the lawyers. And while the basic stages like creation to destruction remain, the NIST 888 revision 2 released late 2025 and the California Delete Act have added complex technical layers that a cyber attorney must navigate. Now let's take a closer dive into the Delete Act and the drop platform 2026. So as of January 1st, 2026, California's delete request and opt-out platform, or DROP, is live. And this is a game changer for the destruction phase of the lifecycle, because it has the one-button rule, which means that consumers can now go to a single state-run portal and request that all registered data brokers delete their personal information simultaneously. There's the technical mandate, where companies must retrieve these requests at least every 45 days and finalize the deletion within 90 days. And then, of course, the penalty, because failure to comply carries a fine of $200 per request per day. For a major data broker, a single week of technical failure could result in millions of fines. And then, of course, the forwarding requirement, where you are now legally required to pass the request down the line. So if you delete a user's data but your vendor or processor keeps it, you are still liable. And looking at the sanitization upgrade from the NIST 888 revision 2, the update has fundamentally changed how we prove data is gone. So the focus shift is away from just wiping and focuses on media sanitization. It's not about the tool you use, but more about the certificate of sanitization that you produce. And then, of course, the CE, the cryptographic erasure, where this is now the gold standard for cloud and SSD storage, because instead of trying to overwrite every bit, which is hard on SSDs, you just destroy the encryption key. And then, of course, for the lawyers, without the key, the data is infeasible to recover, right? So in a court of law, this meets the requirement for permanent destruction. And of course, we need verification, right? You no longer are allowed to just say we ran the tool. You must perform verification or sampling the drives to check for the data, and validation, independent audit, which is an independent audit of the process. Now let's talk about AI and data ghosting. So the newest deep dive for 2026 is in Generative AI Training Data Transparency Act, or the AB 2013. The problem here is that if you use customer data to train an AI model, and that customer later requests deletion via the DROP platform, can you unlearn their data from the AI? The legal conflict is that privacy regulators are now questioning if a deletion is valid if the data's influence still exists within a model's weights. And the 2026 requirement is that developers must disclose what data was used to train the models. And if you cannot prove you remove the PII, or the personally identifiable information, before training, you may be forced to destroy the entire model just to comply with a deletion request. Yeah, so if we had to do a review of the Data Lifecycle 2026 standards, we would now know that the collection phase would have a technical requirement of data minimization scripts, and the 2026 legal trigger would be the AB 2013 transparency disclosures. For the processing phase, the tech requirement is differential privacy, or anonymization. I'm gonna assume that's how you say that. Anonymization, which basically just means making them not known. And the 2026 legal trigger for this would be purpose limitation audits. And then for storage, the storage phase, we would have the tech requirement of encryption at rest, or AES 256. The legal trigger here would be the SEC 8-K breach reporting. And then you have the retention phase, which the tech requirement here would be the Auto-Expiry cloud policies. with the legal trigger of the legal hold or stop delete orders, like we reviewed. For the destruction phase, the technical requirement would be the cryptographic erasure, or the CE, with the legal trigger of the California drop, platform request. And let's go over the assurance shift in the NIST 888 revision 2. So the finalized NIST or updated NIST has moved from a checklist to a sanitization assurance model, which we have reviewed before, and of course the right to be forgotten in AI models, right? And we can also review the data sovereignty versus data residency, because as a cyber attorney, you must know the difference, and this is because they represent different levels of global risk. So data residency is the physical location where the servers are, and the legal consequence of this is determining which local building codes or power regulations apply, while data sovereignty is the legal jurisdiction the data is subject to. And the legal consequence here is, even if the data is resident in Germany, if a U.S. company owns it, the U.S. Cloud Act might give the FBI sovereignty to demand it. Governments are moving towards data localization, requiring that sensitive data like health and financial records never leaves the physical borders of a country where it was created. So, basically, to go over everything we went over, the NIST 888 Revision 2 Certificate of Sanitization. We went over AI Training Disclosure, or the AD 2013, and we also went over a Drop API Integration Plan. With the understanding that you have to keep checking every 45 days to make sure that if anybody put in a request that it is met. And so this is the new 2026, well, not necessarily new, but updated 2026 Data Lifecycle, where we can see that there is a boggling down of handling consumers' data. And actually, there's something I want to research that I didn't do before, because a little bit ago I realized that the websites I visit, they make it a lot more apparent now. In a previous video, I spoke about how it was very ambiguous how websites handled cookies and tracking cookies. Some websites didn't even have that pop-up to allow you to accept cookies at all. And I started to realize shortly after I made that video that almost every website I visit now makes it very clear that cookies are enabled, and you can either choose to deny all cookies or accept all cookies or accept only necessary cookies, which I think probably has something to do with boggling down on data life cycles and just obtaining and using user data in general. But I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about, so we're going to look it up and we're going to figure out how or why that started to happen. Okay, let's figure this out together, shall we? It's interesting to be updated on this. So it says here that the shift towards websites being much more straightforward, direct, and transparent with their cookie banners comes down to a major crackdown on corporate behavior by international regulators. Websites aren't necessarily making these changes out of the goodness of their hearts. They are being legally forced to clean up their acts. The transition is driven by several key developments. The crackdown on dark patterns. For years, websites used the deceptive user interface designs, known as dark patterns, to trick you into consenting to tracking. This included making the accept all button a massive bright green button while hiding the reject all button or reject all choice behind 3 submenus or using confusing double negative paraphrasing. The change is that regulators like the FTC in the US and the European Data Protection Board explicitly ban these practices. If a design deliberately nudges, manipulates, or confuses a user into giving up their data, regulators now rule that the consent is legally invalid. The symmetry of choice rule, one-click reject. Global enforcement agencies like France, CNIL, and California's privacy regulators established a strict rule called symmetry of choice. The rule is that if it takes a user exactly 1 click to accept all cookies, it must take them exactly 1 click to reject them all as well. The impact is that this is why you see massive, clear, equally sized accept and decline reject buttons side by side on the initial pop-up. Hiding the decline option is now an instant ticket to a massive government fine. Tech giants turning up the pressure. It isn't just governments enforcing this. The advertising platforms themselves are demanding it. For instance, Google mandates that advertisers use strict, updated consent frameworks like Google Consent Mode v2. If a website cannot technically prove that a user gave clear, unmanipulated consent, ad networks will block them from tracking ad performance or running personalized ads, and then surging financial penalties. The cost of playing games with data privacy has skyrocketed under regulations like the GDPR or the various state privacy laws like the laws in the US like California, Texas, and Connecticut. Companies are facing multi-million-dollar fines for misconfigured banners that drop tracking scripts before a user actually hits accept. Ultimately, being direct is the safest legal route. Websites have realized that a simple, honest banner is much cheaper than a corporate compliance lawsuit or a total shutdown of their advertising revenue. Perfect. So this literally explains everything that all the changes that I was seeing, and it literally goes against everything I was saying before. And so essentially it was the solution we needed, and it fixed all the problems that I was pointing out when I initially talked about cookies and how, but I did make a point that as time goes on, and of course this is an evident issue, we're going to find a law or a way to put in the law, because since cybersecurity is fairly new, we're still working around it, and as more things come up, we have to, roll with it, essentially. So when other problems come up, we come up with laws behind them. If we can see them before issues arise, we set those laws in place, blah, blah, blah. But I think the FTC is actually doing a pretty good job, and they've been doing a pretty good job since cybersecurity or computers have really became a thing. And I think that as time goes on, especially with the boom of AI and information using AI, and oh my gosh, the way that AI can make things look so realistic now, how is the FTC going to protect people's likeliness and all those sorts of things? How is someone going to be able to decipher that some evidence that were attempted to be admitted in court as evidence was not fabricated by AI, while it looks so real to what could be reality? So I don't know, there's so many things that's going to go on between now and then, but I want to be in the midst of it all. And so taking the time to learn this and making these videos really helps me stay updated and allows me to stay connected to the topics I like to understand and I like to learn. So if you enjoy learning the intersection between cybersecurity and law, just like I did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, we're going to continue to this series, probably even when I get into law school. I'm going to continue this series because I know when I get into law school, it's not going to just be straight studying cyber law. So, I would want to still maintain my studying on the side. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.